Jeda did a man and Tixerwa. Injik Kogi survey. But came into Mashisha. Did Taring Bushana did. Tades ring Bushana did. This young, all the daughter. Shall we start? Yeah. So do you have I hope you have a good night, good sleep, and enjoying here. And yeah. Do you have any questions or any thought or comment? No. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yesterday you said that this the attitude of understanding emptiness is very latent, which is against our natural attitude. Like to become angry, it comes naturally.
Right.
Even a small child knows how to get angry. Nobody teaches him. But this understanding of emptiness is, why is it so very latent? Like why can't we understand it or so easily?
It's not so easy. You mean the understanding of emptiness is were so hard to understand, right? Yeah. That's the whole question is that's why we are doing lots of study and taking much time to realization. Part of the reason you all, as you mentioned, we all are somehow, completely overwhelming some of the emotions. That's that we have a facing problem in every days in personal or society level. So although we all know that angry or some sort of hatred, there's no meaning or no. I mean, maybe there's some, but the most cases is very destructive, right? But although we intellectually understand, but when the cause and condition comes, we just immediately to put the reactions. So how can we overcome and that? That's the big question, right? That we really need it. I think it's most people. How to be control to our emotions, very strong emotions. Sometimes it's arise, just quickly, and then when we realize there's no meaning or I did something wrong and it's already done. So that's why have you ever read? There's a book called Emotional Intelligence, right? Daniel Goleman's. Yeah, that was a great one. That book is kind of our suggestion is revolutionized to the many part of that. It's not only to the thinking or psychological ways or people who are carrying on the business or companies, because before that people pay attention to the measuring to intelligence only to the knowledge, only to the exams, all these things. The Daniel Goleman, what really basically is suggestion is the people who are most intelligent, how to control your emotions. And that will make a lot of successful your career. Because if you control to the emotions, or you are not reaction immediately, because you have to at least give some chances to analyze it. What other people really say, whether that's true or not true. One of the great, point is, Chandakirti. There's a middle way of door middle way.
It's called Introduction connection to the middle way or entering
Yeah. Yes. He beautiful. There's a one line I cannot translate into English, but what really essentially saying is, what does about the strong emotion? It's really completely undermining our intelligence, completely swipe at that moment intelligence. So which means when you act or reaction immediately, anything, and then without analysis, without of thinking, and then decision goes something very wrong, and then you will regret the later part. So which means at least you just little bit control, or a little bit control your emotion, especially hatred. So think about it. When some people say bad word or towards something, you have to think about whether that's true or not, what that's relevant or not. Sometimes if we just ignore it, and that's the best way that respond, because it just go away, because there's something, some of them is nothing relevant to me, if I never react. But some need to be, because that's something relevant to your career or your job or your that's it, we need to be. But without your strong emotion, you just control, and then you just analysis, and what is the best way I should respond, something like that. But that's not easy, like. But one of the things is, to me, my experience, something like that. Yesterday we discussed about the tuk-tuk driver, right? Sometimes when we go to the early time, my experience, sometimes when we go to the tuk-tuk drivers, when you ask to them, but we know in Kushinaga how much cost normal, but they always want more. They always say a little bit. If there's really 100, they will say 120 or something like that. But then I get upset. Oh, he shouldn't be told something like that. If I think it only that way, I just say something, maybe a little harsh word to him. And then he also got some agitated. Then somehow it's sometimes make trouble. But at that time, my case is sometimes, of course, that's his wishes. I can understandable. He always want more, because situation like maybe, I don't know nowadays in true or anymore, that they used to be. And then they have a family, and he has maybe 2 kids, and he has a wife and working in home. He's the only income resource. And then I'm not surprised he's wanting to get more. My mind comes that the reason to understanding of his situation, I completely shut down my emotion. Obviously, I cannot pay what really he wants. But even in that sense, I just calm down my emotion. But I can talk with very nicely to put the reason and answer, and that maybe they have a chances we have a common ground. So what really mean is, to me, is the thing to, kind of control my emotion, some, especially hatred. And the best thing is to understand other circumstance. You cannot put all your circumstance in the first place, right? I think that's really helpful. Sometimes, like, I have some of my relatives, and for example, some of my close or cousin sisters, and the instant is something like that. She sometimes went to her husband, went outside, and her child went to school, and she wants to make nice dinner, okay? And to make dinner, very nice dinner, everything is set up, And then they come with a very, bad attitude. And sometimes she completely, taking what she did in home, because she wants to set up everything. She worked the whole, days, although staying home. But then the, husband comes to in the home, and that, respond or never appreciate, although she was saying, okay, we should have a dinner, and then she get upset, because why he showed me something like that kind of attitude. And in that sense, she got very upset, right? But then think about, okay, if you can, another way is think about, okay, maybe he had a really bad day in the office, or, or kids, they had really bad day in school. Maybe they have a bullying, or they maybe, file their, exam, whatever. So see, if you, that's come down, right? Because I need to be consolation. Instead of taking what I did is, thinking, instead of taking other situations, and then talk very nicely to come down. So that's the way, to me, is the usually I'm telling to the other people. My later experiences, to understanding other people's situation first. That's it really make to little bit of control to your emotions. Obviously, we all experience, but it's nothing too wrong. We don't feel guilty. Sometimes you get a little agitated. That's the way human beings. We all human beings. We all have a sense, but we have to try to minimize those unnecessary to emotion reactions. So that's the only, I think, it's to one way is to practicing Dharma or whatever the goal. But then, if we wanted to more like concrete, or eliminate all this, and then that's why we need to be, the goal is understood better, emptiness, because all this negative that we obviously understand is comes from underneath. There's something bigger or something more like root causes, which is in Buddhist philosophy we call is the ignorance. Because everything comes from ignorance. But like if I don't understand other people's situation, something like that. So that's why we need to be understanding to the other people's situation. That's the one of small, we get rid of small ignorance. So all this come from one of the fundamental root cause is the ignorance, which is more like self-grasping, or it's even further if we go to the more subtle level, is everything is we appear to be kind of independently existing, inherently existence. So that's the root of all the cause of suffering or unsatisfactory, right? Unsatisfaction. So that's why, in order to get rid of root cause of suffering, and that's the only way is that we obviously we cultivating compassion, we cultivating loving and for immeasurable, which is helps to reduce to the negative emotions. But the fundamental level, you have to understood of the emptiness. So that's the way, we are trying to talk to the emptiness, okay? So although it's not easy to understanding, or it's even harder to convince to other people because you need to be lots of, kind of, it's a very deep concept, but you have to try to put a very simple way. Sometimes that's not easy. You need to be, a special skill. Okay. Okay, feel free, because we.
You told about this story, close related. So the question is actually from there. So you also mentioned that the root cause of everything is ignorance. So in that particular context, so acknowledging that I am being ignorant of the cause of the distress of a particular person. Before that, before acknowledging that ignorance, you have to be maybe in some state to acknowledge that ignorance. So what is that pre-context before acknowledging the ignorance of another person?
Do you get it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Re, re, re. Re, re, re. Re, re. Re, re. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. So see, and when we're talking about the negative emotions, and one in the Buddhist philosophy says they have two kind of, kind of ignorance or, delusions. One is comes from with the reasons, maybe even not correct reason, but the wrong view of reason. But some of them is sort of innate come out. But so the problem is when that something comes with that wrong reason or wrong views, we can eliminate once we understanding of the how it's wrong, and you have to change to the concept or perception. But then innate kind of come out. Most of the we have a problem. Lots of it's immediately or innate without any thinking. So in order to get rid of that, you have to do some sort of cultivating. So which means, there's something cause come. How can I come on those, the understanding of other situations? That you need to be trained to. That's why we need to be meditation, right? Awareness, always awareness. What you are doing, like even though sometimes we're doing without thinking, we don't realize, what I'm thinking. That's why, one of the reasons why mindfulness meditation is very, very successful, and especially in the West countries. Because most people say, okay, you just follow what your heart says. Okay, if you want to beach, you just go beach. Okay, if you want to do something, you just do it. That's some sort of people impression. That's the happiness or freedom they feel. Whatever you want, you just do it. And then without any, control it. So that's, I think it's maybe sometimes that's really misleaded because it's totally, ignored to the awareness. But at least you have to aware what you are doing. If something you want to do, but you have to kind of awareness what you are doing. That's why, mindfulness, what really does is just look at yourself every time. Even you are having food, you just focus on the food, okay? So nowadays, sometimes what I do is sometimes eating and then watching the news or something, and then I don't feel sometimes whether that's food, what tastes like, because it's your attention completely took this cell phone or video or what. So there's a sense. And that nowadays some people call it even the mindfulness of eating. So you just focus on what you are eating, and then vegetables, all these things, and then some people realize they have a very different taste when you put the focus on the food, and sometimes one of the problems nowadays people our attention is very, very unlimited, very limited. So even sometimes when I'm talking with you, my mind goes other, and then I cannot fully pay attention to what you are saying. That's really bad. Sometimes I feel, sometimes I did that, and I feel very guilty because I should be pay attention, at least respect to him. Sometimes maybe you deeply you think it's that much no sense, but you have to pay to as a human being. You have to respect, right? So, but that's it's not completely out of our deliberately, but our attention is something like that nowadays, because of so many distractions, right? So, in order to bring to that, you need to be training, because you have to build to the awareness to the every day and every time what you are doing. So, and then sometimes you need to be little judge. Am I doing right? Or am I doing, am I saying good or not? That's, I think it's really important, right? Okay, the original, my plan is that, do you have any? I think you,
Just
okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
because we never defined emptiness, and I just wanted to.
Ah, Ale.
I wanted to understand whether my perception is right or not of what emptiness is. So you can just. I know it's a difficult concept, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to understand from your perspective
Mm-hmm.
what is emptiness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think it's. I will try to answer in today, and today I, and my original. That's the original my plan is, we try to talk a little bit about selflessness, which is some part of the Buddhist philosophy. The emptiness is almost like equivalent with the selflessness. But then, some of the higher school says, no, that's the, at the beginning of, or it's a preliminary preparation of the understanding of emptiness. But emptiness has to go beyond that. So I try to my best to discuss with you and today, and I hope if you like, I will invite one of another scholar, my friend, who are from Mumbai, origin in India. So he's graduate from IIT. So he will hope join tomorrow. If you have any, maybe you can ask to in Hindi or other languages. If he can speak perfect to the Marathi. If you want to freely to asking Hindi or something, he will be the best person. I will invite him to. If you like, is that okay? If I invite tomorrow, then my talk will be take to the last day, right? I can do that. Tomorrow maybe I can come together and we just discuss with him also. That's also possible, right? Because we don't have to take very formally, just take friend as discussions. That's the best way, is the better understood to asking questions, something like that, right? Okay, yeah, that's the way to. I will ask to him. Yeah, he should be available tomorrow morning. So yeah, you can ask other cultures things maybe more than me in Tanya can explain more than he can, because he's from Mumbai, so he's experienced to staying in the monastery, to doing something like that. Yeah, he's good. Okay, let's we try to do a little bit about the short meditation, right? I think surely most of you do, and in some sense, because they have, I know in this country we have a lot of options available in everywhere. Of course, we have to take very relax. And one of the thing is, His Holiness always says at the morning, first maybe you have to appreciate you have a wonderful life now in the present moment, because so many people, they slept last night, they cannot get up today, so that means we are alive. We have to appreciate. We are also very healthy. We are also a wonderful place, and with the wonderful peoples. Itself is very not very common, so we cannot take granted that opportunity. So we have to appreciate what we have, very healthy and breathing, talking, and that's the self-appreciate. So that's why we call the precious human life. So once you realize how you have a precious human life, and the second thing is, I'm not going to waste that wonderful human life. So what should I do, at least today? Okay, I'm going to think about to the good way, whatever I'm doing, maybe for others, or maybe for family, maybe for the society. I will try to at least to try to contribute to them. So which means I'm not going to waste my life in today. So let's take to the 3 deep breath. So once you breathe in, you just imagine all the, the fresh air or natural resource and all the new fresh, energies coming into your noise and your, throat and all the way to your belly. And just when you come out, breathe, you just think about all the wasted and unpleasant and pleasant feelings just come out, like when people smoking, when they come out, smoke, like that. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing is we just maybe set up to at least I will try to control my emotion today. At least try to awareness my emotion today. So if you set up that sort of the morning and set up to the motivations, it will kind of good impact. Sometimes when they come to the situation, you just it's a remember what you promised in the morning. So that's why it's sometimes really powerful. Okay. Okay, that's the basic. Maybe supposed to do every day. If you have a little more time, you just counting breath and just focus on the breath and set up to the goal to the what you're doing in today, something like that. It's up to you. But today we are try to little bit to try to sense of concept of selflessness. Okay. Yesterday we talked about a little bit about to the impermanent, right? Today we have to take to sense of selflessness. What is the concept of that? Maybe in in Sanskrit terms, anatma or selflessness. So let's focus on the how do we feel when we say I or him or he? We always dealing or relation with their some sort of their 5 aggregate. We usually describing 5 aggregate or some sort of their body or their mind or their speech. Let's do the analysis at the moment. How do we describe to the other people? Like, just think about one of your friend. How do we describe to that person? Based on their physical, or based on their feeling, or based on their intellectual? How do we describe? Obviously, we always describing when we saying he's really beautiful or he's really strong or he's tall, he's short, he's black or he's white, whatever we describing based on his body appearance, right? And then when we taking his intelligence or his very expertise, all this based on his knowledges. And then sometimes he's happy, he is suffering, whatever. So we are describing his feeling. So think a little moment. How can we describe to the other peoples? So in that sense, and sometimes we think there's some sort of, like example, your friend, we always think that person is some sort of, they have a core, his identity, without relation of his physical feature or feelings, all these things. But let's analyze this. If there's something really can be found, if we really analyze this, there's essence of other persons. We assume there is, but if we analyze this, can we found that? We may be believing there's something, but can we really found there's some sort of pinpoint, something in between his, chest, or in deep down, maybe between his heart or lung or somewhere else, or is that in his brain, or somewhere his, head, or if we analyze it to his brain, and there's maybe if you have a little knowledge about us, scientific knowledge, they have some sort of, the Oxford law or friend law, or side, or if we really trying to, deductionists, and can we found there's some sort of pinpoint, particular things that is him? Maybe not. Some of the neuroscientists believing there's some sort of, has to be some sort of, the particle or kind of neuron, or some sort of, particular cell, or particular, things that the responsibility, all the, neuron activities coming out, maybe called to the mind or consciousness, but it's really hard to find if we analyze this. Everything, it's just. So likewise, can we think about what I feel when I say I? I'm, enjoying, I am meditating. Basically means I'm, sitting on the looks like meditating. So describing your positions. So is there any essence that I presuming, or I believing some sort of a core of I, something in somewhere in your stomach, or somewhere in your heart, or somewhere in your lung, or somewhere in your brain, where it is? So the point is, when we're trying to find there's an essence or something particular things independently existence of I, we usually take granted that a sort of a king staying in somewhere in center of my body, but is my body is something else. Especially if you're a believer next life, our body is nowhere to go in next life. So that means my body is not mine, not me. It's just part of my, aggregate, not me. So then presumably we are thinking, oh, the mind is me, consciousness is me. But that also, if we analyze this, the same thing. What kind of mind are you? When you are emotional, that's you? Or when you're thinking intellectually to understanding, that is you? Or when you're feeling very, very unpleasant, that is you? That is me? Well, sometimes when I enjoy, that's me. No, if we, same thing, if we analyze this further and further, or any aggregated, can we found there's a pinpoint of I. So if we don't found any particular I, but we take granted, we usually presume or completely believing that is I. When some people say bad word toward you, you think that's really hard to me. But if there's no essence or independent self-existence, and why should I, angry? Because there's no basis on those who are hurting. So one of the beautiful example gives Shantideva says sometimes when you're believing there's independent of your friend or your enemy, but when you're reacting, sometimes when you're really angry to your enemy, when you are trying to get hitting to him, you try to really hitting his head or hand or some other part of the body, which is not really your enemy, because hit, head or hand is not your enemy. Your enemy is as other than her, aggregate or her body. So why you, challenge with them instead of challenging his body or his, which is not really him. So that means, although you are believing there's some, core of him or he or core of me or something like that, but it really it doesn't exist if you really analyze this. So that's this really sort of meaning, try to understand of selflessness. So here's the tricky. If there's no existence, any self, who can we go to the next life? Who can we carry on to the my identity? How the function goes to that I create some karma in my past life that will generate into this life. How that can be, because there's no truly existence of self. Who can be carry on this? How can we function all these things? So that means we need to be distinguished between independent existence of self and the conventional level of self. So the summarized point is selflessness means there have no existence of independent self, yet they have a conventional self completely existent. That's why we can do normal function, everything we do based on the causal conditions. So when we're talking about a selflessness, that doesn't mean I doesn't exist, you doesn't exist, he doesn't exist. No. As convention level, we all existence, everything work well as normal. But when you're talking about the independent level, what we believing, very naively believing there's something core inside my body which doesn't exist. So that's the area of the selflessness. Thank you. Yeah, that's. I don't know how much I can tell to. So, so do you feel some sort of there's did it make sense, or yeah? So do you have any thought on the comment on that? Okay.
If we say that there's no inner I,
Mm-hmm.
something different from my body,
Right.
then is the body I?
Oh, what?
Is the body I? Is it just physical?
Yeah, but the thing is, our aggregate, or five aggregate, right? We feeling and the body and all these things. This combination, we just, label, this is me, yet convention level, that works. But we usually expecting or kind of grasping much more than there's some sort of true or some sort of very core, and that's the core we habituate, somehow we kind of believing something beyond reality. That's we believing. So that's where all the delusions generated. Like when we watching movie, it's as if you think like this movie, then it's all the your kind of emotion is very distant, right? At least. But if you take very seriously, everything is happen because it's somehow the movie creators need to be that because it's make more exciting or make more feel real, right? But if you more and more feel like real, and then that makes so much because if you want to that characters survive, if somehow he gets something wrong, you feel upset. This is starting to generate your emotions without any unnecessary. So I used to be, when I watched the cricket, so I really liked to the Sachin Tendulkar, So, and I expecting, the waiting to the, okay, there's between maybe Australia or whoever comes to the game. Okay, I'm waiting and waiting. And then actual game, there's sometimes, the 2 or 3 first over, the 1 or 2 balls come, and he out. And I'm so upset. Because that's I really waiting because how he can make run everything so, and then sometimes I'm so sad because I'm waiting that moment and it just it's gone, and then think about that. What is relevant to me if he created more run or if he doesn't make? What's the relevant to me? It's nothing relevant. But yet, my emotion goes ups and down because I put lots of my impression on that, right? And sometimes when I watch movies, it's sometimes unnecessary. There's emotion come up because I took very, very seriously. So that I'm not saying that 100% too, but somehow if we created it, there's some sort of core soul, and that's really, really grasping at the much more than a reality. There's some sort of a conventional self-existence, but if you make this is more real, especially in such very long time, you are habituated, and that's created all the negative emotions because of you took so seriously. So let's make little sense. So I'm trying to make sense, but it's a really need to be your analytical thought. That's the part of the what we are Buddhist philosophy teaching is. We will give you to the idea how to analyze, how to think. It's the really it's up to you whether that makes sense or not. It's really need to be exercise your mind. And then you think, oh, that's comments, that's just, So, yeah, that's the idea.
As I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but rather than more explainable, it could be more experiential,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing selflessness. But if we try to put it in words, let's say, so can we say that if we negate all the impermanent things like body, the limbs, and even the intelligence, memory, so all these things are bound to change from time to time. So they are more impermanent. So if we reduce those impermanent things and we are keep reducing those impermanent, we will reach to the state of selflessness. But my doubt is, after reducing everything, how could I realize? Like, I'm not able to imagine what it could be. Like, how can I recognize that actually I am now I am feeling the selflessness, even experiencing it.
Right. So, here's the thing: it's when you completely negate of the existence of the independent itself, you also have to be balanced, because you have to be some sort of a conventional existence of self, because that's the way we work. Then otherwise there's a danger. So see, the famous sutra called the Heart Sutra, right? Even sometimes I see I ordered to the Times of India, the newspaper, early time. That's one of the reasons it helps to me to understand my English, and also in my housemaid, and then some of the monks they say asking to me, you order to month to the Times of India, but I see you only watch to the last page. I'm talking about exactly, especially cricket. So, but it really helps to me to understand my English and all these things. And then sometimes I read to the quote. Even the Heart Sutra quote is quite frequently come up in the Times of India. Form is empty, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. To see, there's two syllables. Form is emptiness, telling to that everything is emptiness. But everything is empty, then why are we doing and what we are doing? So that says form is empty. Emptiness is form. So see, there's a kind of awarding to, balance, to what we call extreme.
Falling into two extremes.
Right.
So using that quotation from the Buddha and the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. It avoids falling into either of two extremes, the two ends. So you could fall into the extreme of permanence, and then also there's the extreme of denigration, the extreme of non-existence.
Yeah.
So instead, we recognize that there is a potentially existing self, and that there's karma action, right? So actions have results, and all of that is still relevant, all of that is still real. It's just
Yeah, it's that. So it's a really, I like that's, it's called the Heart Sutra. If you are chanting, if you heard that, maybe sometime you can play today. There's a Sanskrit, the version of Heart Sutra, and then chanting, even, Lada Mangesh chanting that is really, really beautiful. Although it's not very clear in the YouTube, but there's some old version of, she's chanting, everybody knows her voice. It's really nice. I love to, although maybe I got because I already have in the understanding in Tibetans, and I assume, or maybe I read that part or something like that. It's a Sanskrit chanting. It's very, very nice. Maybe I'll, maybe sometimes you can play here before we do meditation. As sometimes the chanting is.
just one point about that phrase, that expression, the two extremes.
Oh, okay.
Because the word, they say extreme of denigration, sometimes the extreme of nihilism, but really if you just think about the real meaning of the word, it's like you're cutting out too much. That's the point. The extreme
Yeah. And it's really a word. It's a good term. It's called nihilism, which is a nothing existence. So in the early time, when people translating to the like so there are all these texts, they just the emptiness is just treated as similar as nihilism. So which is it's a completely misunderstood. So something like that. So we are almost running out of time. So we have about 5 more minutes. If you have any comment or questions, feel free. Maybe you are tired already. I used to be tired too when I received to the teaching, my teachers. Although I like to go to teachings, but I don't want to stay there very long. So, sometimes I wish he should dismiss class earlier. Something like that. So, is there any other questions that's not today's topics? Is something just how monks live monastery, or how personal or whatever? If you have any thought.
Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Not related to any of.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fine.
I've been thinking about. It's to do with taking of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very bad karma.
Uh-huh.
Life. But then there are monks who go into clear light meditation and they pass away. Is that not one way of letting go of life? But my question has 3-4 parts actually.
Okay.
The second part is, of course, when you kill somebody, that is, of course, bad karma.
All right.
There's also somebody who commits suicide. We say it's not good to take your own life.
Right.
But in today's world, there's a lot of people who are suffering and who want to cease their suffering.
Uh-huh.
And I was reading about some time ago when a doctor was arrested because he helped some person who was terminally ill and dying and wanted to pass away. And euthanasia now is also recognized in some countries as.
Yes.
So in this context, where does the Buddhist philosophy or thinking say which part is good or bad, or what is? So for me, it was. So how do we say that euthanasia, is it bad karma, or is it, or who suffers? Is the doctor taking a life, or is he alleviating the suffering? So what is his thing? And then the person who's also dying is seizing the life
Right.
more than the natural way, or just to overcome suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said all beings want to not have suffering.
Right.
It's part of the Four Noble Truths.
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of understand this. I've been struggling with it in my own analysis.
Right.
Share it with you.
It's a really good topic that we can discuss or debate. Who is the right and who is the wrong. So I usually there's a if you look at listen to the Harvard philosophy, the professors they talking about at the first day the good greater for good, right? Something like that. What? For good, something like that. If there's maybe two kind of board, if some maybe or group board, the people in the board is sinking because overweight, and do we have to shoot some of people out because to the maybe other 100 or something like that? But then says if that person is very important, like Einstein, or they usually put Einstein, what should I do? The one person is more important than 100. So it's always debate. But here's the point is, my point is, if you are, to me, is kind of believing to the next life. And that will also consequence of what we did, karma, in this life. So in this sense, usually there's, I think majority think, if there's very, very people suffering, he should die. Because, but that to me is, are you sure he's better life after this? If there's a better life or everything's eliminated, then sure, it's maybe some sense there's a justification because you don't want to see suffering. But that really means I don't want to see suffering, because if he's will suffering much, the Buddhist context, if he will born in even lower realm, like hungry goat or animal realm, even maybe more suffering. So in that sense, it's a it's the end of this life is not end everything. So people always, there's some sort of expecting, the goal is, I know the people taking, their life because don't want to suffering anymore. Are you sure after you take this life, they have a good one? Or that, we don't know. Most people, they have no idea, not even think about that. Then another thing is, the most they have people going to take their life, they're asking, are you sure there's somebody's not worrying to you? There's all your family, all your friends. So I work a little bit about the people who are working on the, psychologists who are trying to, helping to the suicide case. The most word does help is are you sure they completely, sacrifice themselves. But then asking are you sure, are you going to take, all your family or your people who are really concerning to you? Are you really sure if you want, your suffering will end, but they're concerning? Do you want they're worrying more or they keep the remorse to them? So that's sometimes, wake up because, I cannot think only myself. I have to think about themselves. So that's why sometimes completely woke up them to, even though they're taking suffering. So what I'm saying is when a doctor is maybe completely there, out of the good motivations, but action is, in the action is really, I think in Buddhist context it's bad. So there's a mixed karma. That maybe motivation is good. Taking other lives not good reason because even you took it. Are you sure there's better in the next life? If he get the even worse places, then there's no point, right? So that sense. Another sense is human life is so important. Some people say, okay, if there's beggars, or is that really meaningful? Of course, they have a potentially. They can do so many, good things, even though you have nothing. But you can do so many good things once you're alive or once you're human beings. Okay, let's assume there's maybe really, really kind of human. But then even maybe you're poverty or something, but it's way, way better than many animals. Some animals, maybe they have, there's a dog in the White House. Do you think it's really, really precious? It's conditional. It's our protections. But sometimes it's not good for the dog because the dog habituation waltzing everywhere. If you are, the person, the dog, you have to be, there's security, you have to stay in home. It's more like person catching. They don't see to all the decorations or metals, all these things. Do they value? No, this is just same thing in the other, objects. And even worse is they cannot express what they're feeling, and there's no way to understand emptiness or whatsoever, right? So at least you're a human being, although you are suffering or although your condition is bad, you still can work your mind. And you can still, express. There's some people very, very suffering situation, but they can say something, very powerful word that really helps sometimes people who are living. So you can do so many things. So what I'm trying to say is, as long as you are alive, it's really valuable. So that means anybody who are doing against of that is maybe, unfair. That's my sense. Right. And maybe it's a really good debate point. What do you feel?
So from the perspective of an infinite stream of consciousness that goes from life to life, then that's exactly right. So when it comes to a legal issue, then that's very difficult because that perspective is not the secular widespread accepted perspective. So the secular perspective, the non, well, yeah, it's still it's a philosophically imbued perspective, but what's the philosophy it's imbued with? One of nihilism. So that's another kind of nihilism when we think that consciousness just ceases at death and that we don't go on. That's a nihilistic view of thinking. So that's a materialist, based on the materialist worldview. But that is the kind of politically kind of the view that has to be considered politically, because we live in democratic societies, at least in the democratic world, right? And those democratic societies go based on a majority view, right? So if a majority of people think that way, then that they have the right to make laws in that way. So they would have the right, again, as politically, to make a law where a doctor can do that, right? And that's why the country, there's maybe a dozen or 2 dozen countries.
Yeah, I think Canada has said okay.
Canada has it,
And in Switzerland also.
yeah. So I mean, in that sense, we can't blame them, but still, we're just being technical about,
Yeah.
the reality, the reality, and we see that consciousness will continue on, then it becomes an action that will lead to future suffering.
Because also to look at from the perspective of the individual who's actually suffering, because I've had to deal with some of these
Yeah.
people who are, terminally ill and really in suffering. I mean,
Right,
I
right,
see
right.
that. I had a personal experience with some very close friends, and then, we have this issue. Oh, I hope he dies because.
Right. That's
also
I mean,
feel bad about it.
yeah, I have heard all of my friends.
Yeah. And
The same thing.
The person themselves wants, they say, I can't take it anymore.
Right.
Every organ is dying.
Right.
And they say, let me go, and then the doctors are still trying to keep them alive by putting all this. So then this thing was, at that moment, when you say, listen, instead of artificially keeping them alive, why do you just not at least remove those things which allow them to do?
Well, that's
That's really the thing, because
Yeah.
the relatives know, no, keep him alive because we love him and maybe he'll recover. There's this hope,
Right.
But there's no hope because the doctors
Right.
themselves say, oh, he's got 4 hours left to live, but you make him suffer for an extra 4 hours or 4 days. So then who is extending the suffering? Is the family extending the suffering?
Right.
Doctors extending the
Yeah.
suffering? So then these are the questions that come up for me. And
Yes.
I say, so should we have not put him in the hospital, or should we have, I've been faced with these questions multiple times.
What if the doctor is not available? What if?
Yeah, and also lots of the cost. That's it. It's a really, sometimes after you left your family, it's a completely lost lots of all the income at the ends. So it's
becomes very personal.
yes, it's a really complicated.
But
I
when you
know.
think about the future life, then does it change that way of thinking? Like if you think, well, sure, they're suffering for an extra 4 days, but the moment that breath cuts and their heart stops and their brain goes dead, then they might get, thrown into a complete hellish, nightmare.
Another
for the
suffering.
next million years. So that extra 4 days was actually quite nice. What changes in that?
Yeah, I mean,
You don't believe that. I mean, if you believe that.
I do, but at that moment, it's so hard.
Right, exactly. So we have totally understood. This is really complicated.
Just to kind of share.
Yeah, sure.
Story.
Of course.
I experienced something exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a very close friend who had a heart attack on the golf course, and he collapsed there. And by the time the medics got to him, he was completely pronounced brain dead. And then his whole family came, and he was put into hospital for more than 10 days. Everything. I mean, they're just keeping him artificially alive. And then the whole family got around saying this is going to be very expensive.
Right.
And the doctor said, look, this is your decision. We can let him go. We can remove him off life support. And that was the day and then my other friend was there. He actually said, no, I don't want you to do that. Because, and you will not believe, 2 hours later, he woke up.
Oh.
And the doctor who was recommending that he be
No. Right.
removed from life support was in shock, because all of us they were there, and then so he asked him, he gets up, and he wouldn't believe this. He said, the doctor said, who are you? And he looks at him and says, I'm the beast. That's the word, the first word he said, I am the beast, looking at the doctor. I don't know how he managed to get that sense of humor when you come out of a coma.
Right.
But later on he said he could hear everything, actually. He was listening to everything. He was listening, and he was aware of his heart.
Yeah, yeah. So
absolutely aware
it's
of
very,
what's happening.
yeah.
There
So
is
in
other way
that,
around.
yeah, yeah,
Thankfully, it
exactly.
was,
Yes, yes.
So that's not a case of someone experiencing suffering. That's a case of, well, he had some consciousness apparently, but, you know, brain dead, where he
Yes,
wasn't
brain dead.
able to communicate.
yeah.
This is so
But
terrible.
they had
Please
pronounced
let
him
me
dead.
know, you know.
He had no brain waves. It was absolutely,
What about now? We have one of our lamas, one of the high lamas in our Kumsin, who lives in Queens, New York. He's in a coma for
Yeah.
the past 2 months or so. What are they doing with him? Do you know?
Yeah, and then we have a very close and very, our part of our teachers who get coma. But the good news is yesterday, although 2 months ago now, it's completely coma. But 2 days ago, he's, little sensing. Really? Yeah, it's a really, I was shocking to the, yes, a little bit. And yeah, it's a not obvious, but little bit. But it means it's still alive. Yeah, they have a great chances. And the doctor says recover.
But is he on life support? What is he? He's breathing on his own?
No, it's a little support. I think breathing is maybe a little bit support, but yeah, and the food is completely.
Right. So he's not intubated.
Maybe a little bit, because they show some. Yes, but then show some senses when there's some people, the sitting trying to massage, and then some sense his hand is a little pushing, which means it's showing something like I don't want to do that, which is good sign, It's a kind of shocking.
I also don't understand. When they're in this coma, and the doctors are saying everything is shut down, obviously all the sense consciousness are not there.
Right.
So how are they sensing and hearing? Is it through the sense consciousness, or is it direct perception?
Okay.
Again, my question.
Yeah. It's a completely that's how we like it. Right.
Who was
experiencing that?
Right.
Okay, I have a question that is almost good transition. So we did this entire exercise where we tried to find the self or I.
Right.
Where's the seat of I in the body?
Right.
And we couldn't find it.
Right.
But at the same time, because we don't want to get into the nihilistic.
Right.
We say that okay, you're taking away too much. That's what we said.
Right.
So then, if you go the opposite way around, where is I, and you go outwards, say the food we eat, the breath that we
Right.
take, the breath that we take is what I am taking, what he's also taking.
Right.
So is it that I am everywhere and I am you, you are me, and like even the conversation that we had was again I am worried about somebody else, almost maybe similar to how I am worried about somebody cutting my hand.
Right.
So am I sort of getting it when it comes down to the finding selflessness, where myself is everywhere and while not, I'm just little
Confused. Yeah, sure. It's I really. One thing is I really like it because you sense something, because that's the whole point. Sometimes when I think I talk, sometimes people don't feel it and don't understand it. So that's really feel bad, right? So the point is, but still we have an identity. And I am separate from you, and I have my own karma, which created myself, and the will suffering or the will get when result in myself. There's some sort of continuity of me, but that's only about the conventional level. But what really trying to me is try to understand what usually I perceive me. That's the one way to understand we are really, what's the fundamental goal of trying to understand the selflessness? Because trying to understood how usually my perception without analysis, what kind of I perceive when I'm taking to without noticing any granted to what he's hurting me, everything. So that's it. We try to recognize self-grasping. So that's one of the reasons we are doing to exercise. 다른 아주 dancing 뭐시야 지금 와서 좀 친지 로 뭐시야 도 나와
Yeah, so we have to, part of this exercise is just to become aware of that sense that's, identifying in our own experience, this sense of grasping at a self, this sense of this perception or feeling of this self.
Yeah, then another reason is that we try to, whether my perception is completely delusion or is that's very the perspective that whatever it is, the reality perspective. We try to, better, kind of correction of our perspective. So that's the one thing. Another thing is, although we realize a little bit there's an independent self that we kind of taking grasping doesn't exist, but they have some conventional level that I in me, you existent in that level, and we doing everything is right, or we can identify everything. So that sense, maybe we can talk like, yeah. Okay.
One thing, so like if you just think about if you're saying even conventionally, I am everything and I am you even, then it would just like we just use logic. So right, it follows that, right? So take the subject, your thought, I want to raise my hand, right? It follows that it's the cause of another person, Rajan, raising his hand, right? So you can't think I'll raise my hand and Rajan's hand will go up. It won't go up, right? Causality going on that we just have to acknowledge is there. But you're right, in the when you're really thinking about it, then that sense of solid self can dissolve away. Yeah.
When you say my thought, what does that my refer to?
So yeah, just the thought that appears in a certain consciousness, which is causally connected to prior memories and prior experiences, that is related to this physical
So the
body.
consciousness.
Your mental consciousness, right? One person's mental consciousness doesn't cause another person's another person's body to move, for instance, right?
I have a small request. Like you mentioned about the small infinite stream of consciousness. I think this whole I, me, we, all these things might be covered in that infinite stream of consciousness if we have some special lecture on it. Because if we think that we are part of this infinite stream of consciousness, then that kind of analogy that where I am part of that infinite stream of consciousness, the other person is also part of that. So if something is part of the same machinery, then that distinction I or I mean that will go away. So I think lecture on that.
Yeah, I think we are really over time. So we can. I'd like to your enthusiasm to kind of this. We really need to be this kind of discussion and everybody to be really involved. So thank you very much. And lastly, whatever we usually do is that, as mentioned, the beginning we have to set up to the motivations. At the end of the session, we usually do dedication, right? Yeah. So just think about whatever. Although we did something here to understanding, if you believe in something, we create some sort of good karma or good merit, and we should dedicate that not only to me, as for good for others. So just take a moment to dedicate. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe.
Yeah. See you day after tomorrow. Maybe Kalden will available tomorrow. He will come.
Can I check first before you go? Did anyone want to go to the ceremony at 10:30?
Yes.
You have time. Well, the appointment is due.
Oh.
the 가래 지기. 내가 전부 제시야.